Yesterday, I was standing in a quiet hospital hallway, staring at a door I wasn't sure I had the courage to open. My hands were shaking. My heart felt like it was 60 years too late. Inside that room was a man I hadn't seen since I was a girl, a man I was never supposed to find again. A nurse looked at me and said softly, "He's been asking for you." That's when everything inside me cracked. Because the truth is, I had waited my entire life for this moment, and now that it was here, I didn't know if I was ready to hear what he had to say, or why he disappeared in the first place. Yesterday, I stood in a hospital hallway that felt too quiet for everything I was carrying inside me. The floor was polished, so clean I could see my reflection in it, and for a second, I didn't even recognize the woman staring back. 60 years will do that to you. It changes your face, your posture, the way you breathe when you're scared. And I was scared. Right in front of me was a simple white door. No window, just a small plastic sign with a name on it. His name. I hadn't said it out loud in decades. Not to my husband. Not to my children. Not even to myself. But there it was, like it had been waiting for me. My hand hovered inches from the handle, but I couldn't make myself touch it. My fingers felt stiff, like they didn't belong to me anymore. Like if I opened that door, everything I had spent a lifetime holding together would come undone in a single breath. I told myself I didn't have to do this. I could turn around, walk back down that hallway, get in my car, go home, pretend this phone call never came. But my feet didn't move, because deep down, I knew this wasn't just a door. It was the end of a question I had lived with my entire life. A soft voice pulled me out of my thoughts. "He's been asking for you." I turned and there was a nurse standing a few feet behind me. Gentle eyes. Calm voice. Like she had seen this moment play out before. I swallowed, trying to steady myself. "Did he say my name?" She nodded. More than once. That hit me harder than I expected. For a second, the hallway blurred. My chest tightened in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not even when I lost my husband. Not even when life tested me in every other way it could. This was different. Because this wasn't grief. This was something unfinished. I looked back at the door, and suddenly, I wasn't an old woman anymore. I was that girl again. Standing in a place I wasn't supposed to be. Feeling something I wasn't allowed to feel. Holding on to someone I was told to forget. And I had tried. God knows I had tried. I built the life. A good one. I did everything I was supposed to do. I loved the man I married in the way I knew how. I raised my children. I showed up. I stayed strong. But some things, they don't leave you. They just get quieter. Until a moment like this brings them all the way back. My hand finally moved closer to the handle. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips now. Slow. Heavy. Certain. 60 years. 60 years of silence. 60 years of not knowing why he disappeared. 60 years of telling myself it didn't matter anymore. And now he was on the other side of that door. Waiting. Asking for me. I pushed the door open before I could change my mind. The room was dim. Quiet except for the soft beeping of a monitor. For a second, I just stood there trying to adjust not to the light, but to the reality of him being right in front of me. He looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. Fragile. Like time had taken more from him than it had from me. I almost didn't recognize him. But then he moved his head slightly, like he felt someone standing there. His eyes opened slowly, and they landed on me. And everything stopped. 60 years disappeared in a single breath. He stared at me like he wasn't sure I was real. Like if he blinked, I might vanish again. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight, like something was sitting there, refusing to let any words out. Then his lips parted. And in a voice that was barely more than a whisper, he said it. "Rosie." No one had called me that in decades. Not my husband. Not my children. Not even my closest friends. I had buried that name along with everything that came with it. But hearing it again, it didn't feel strange. It felt like something inside me had just been unlocked. My knees felt weak, and I had to grab the back of a chair to steady myself. He kept looking at me, his eyes searching my face like he was trying to find the girl he used to know. "I thought I'd never see you again," he said, his voice breaking between each word. I finally found my voice, but it didn't sound like mine. I didn't think you wanted to. The words came out before I could stop them. He flinched. Just slightly. But I saw it. And right then, I knew whatever story I had lived with all these years wasn't the same one he had. I looked for you, he said, a little stronger now, like the need to be understood was holding him together. For years, I looked. I shook my head without even realizing it. No, you didn't. Because that's what I had believed my entire life. That he let me go. That he chose to walk away. That whatever we had meant something only to me. But the way he was looking at me now, it didn't match that story. There was no distance in his eyes. No indifference. Just something heavy. Something carried for far too long. I wrote to you, he said. Over and over again. My heart skipped. I never got anything, I whispered. Silence filled the room again. But this time it felt different. Not empty. Heavy. Like something was sitting between us, waiting to be understood. He turned his head slightly, like even that small movement cost him something. I kept thinking, maybe you were happy, he said. Maybe you forgot me. I let out a quiet breath that almost turned into a laugh, but it didn't feel like humor. I tried. I said. I really did. And that was the truth. I had tried to forget him. Tried to build something new over something that never really ended. But standing there now, hearing his voice, hearing that name, I knew one thing for sure. Neither of us had ever really let go. I was 17 this summer, everything broke. It was a small town. The kind where everyone knew your name, your parents, and what time you got home the night before. Nothing stayed private for long. Especially not something like us. I met him at the local fair. It was late July. Hot, sticky air. The kind that makes everything feel slower. I was standing near the lemonade stand, fanning myself with a folded paper, when he walked up beside me like it was the most natural thing in the world. You look like you regret coming, he said. I remember turning to him, annoyed at first. But then I saw his smile. Easy. Confident. Like he didn't carry the same weight the rest of us did. I don't regret it, I said. I just didn't expect it to be this hot. He laughed. That's summer here. You either survive it or complain about it. That was it. Nothing dramatic. Nothing special. But somehow, everything started right there. After that, I kept running into him. At the diner. Outside the grocery store. Walking past my street like he had a reason to be there. And slowly, those small moments turned into something more. We started talking longer. Sitting closer. Finding reasons to stay just a little bit more each time. He made me feel seen. Not as someone's daughter. Not as someone who had rules and expectations tied to her name. Just me. We started meeting in places no one would question. The park. The back row of the movie theater. The edge of town where the road turned quiet and the streetlights faded out. I knew it wasn't something my family would accept. He wasn't from the kind of family mine approved of. That mattered where I came from. Maybe more than anything else. My father had already made that clear long before I ever met him. You don't mix your life with people who can't match it, he used to say. At the time, I thought he was talking about success. Later, I realized he meant control. So, I didn't tell them. At first, it felt like a small secret. Something harmless. Something that belonged just to me. But secrets grow. And so did what we had. One night, we were sitting in his truck just outside town, the radio playing low. I remember resting my head against the window, watching the dark stretch of road ahead. I'm gonna leave this place someday, he said. I turned toward him. And go where? Anywhere that doesn't feel this small, he said. Then he looked at me. You'd come with me? My heart skipped in a way I didn't understand back then. I don't know, I said, even though part of me already did. He nodded, like he understood more than I said out loud. We've got time, he said. That's what we both believed. That there was time. Time to figure things out. Time to tell my family. Time to make it right. But time runs out faster than you think. It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing felt different when I woke up that morning. Same house. Same routine. Same silence at the breakfast table. But something had already changed. I just didn't know it yet. That evening, when I walked through the front door, my father was standing in the living room. Waiting. He didn't say hello. Didn't ask where I'd been. He just looked at me in a way I had never seen before. Cold. Certain. Where were you? He asked. My stomach tightened. Out with friends. He stepped closer. Slow. Measured. Don't lie to me. My heart started pounding. I'm not lying, I said, but my voice didn't hold steady. That's when he said his name. Just like that. No hesitation. No doubt. And everything inside me dropped. Because in that moment I knew. This wasn't a question anymore. It was over. That night, everything moved too fast for me to understand. My father didn't yell. That was the worst part. He stayed calm. Controlled. Like he had already decided how this was going to end. You're not seeing him again, he said. I tried to speak, but he didn't give me the chance. This stops tonight. I remember shaking my head, stepping back like I could somehow get out of that moment. You don't understand, I said. You don't even know him. I know enough, he replied. That was it. No discussion. No space for me to explain what he meant to me. Just a decision. My mother stood in the doorway the whole time. Silent. Watching. Not stopping any of it. That hurt more than I expected. Because I kept waiting for her to say something. Anything. She didn't. Within an hour, my suitcase was on the bed. I didn't pack it. He did. Clothes. Shoes. Things I didn't even ask for. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what was happening. Where am I going? I asked. You're staying with your aunt, he said. Out of state. First thing in the morning. My chest tightened. For how long? As long as it takes. That answer didn't mean anything. And at the same time, it meant everything. I ran to the phone. I don't even remember deciding to do it. My body just moved. I dialed his number with shaking hands. It rang once. Twice. Then my father walked in and pulled the cord straight out of the wall. The silence that followed felt louder than anything. You're done, he said. I turned to him, my whole body shaking now. You can't do this. I already did. That was the moment I realized I had no control. Not over where I went. Not over who I spoke to. Not even over my own life. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the window, waiting for something to change. Waiting for him. I kept thinking he would come. He had to. He knew where I lived. He knew how to find me. Maybe he already knew something was wrong. Maybe he was on his way. Every sound outside made my heart jump. A car passing. Footsteps. The wind brushing against the trees. I held on to every little noise like it meant something. Like it meant he was close. But he never came. Morning came too quickly. My father didn't say much. He just picked up my suitcase and told me it was time. The drive felt endless. I watched the town disappear through the window. Every street. Every corner. Every place that meant something to me. All of it slipping away without any say from me. I kept looking back, even when there was nothing left to see. At my aunt's house, things were already arranged. A room ready. Rules already set. No phone calls unless supervised. No visitors. No going out alone. It felt like I had been erased from my own life. The first thing I did when I got a moment alone was write him a letter. I told him everything. What happened. Where I was. That I didn't leave him. That I never would. I waited days for a reply. Then weeks. Every time the mail came, my heart raced. Every envelope felt like it could be his. But it never was. I wrote again. And again. Each time, I tried to say it clearer. Stronger. Like maybe the words just needed to be better. But nothing came back. No letter. No call. Nothing. And slowly, something inside me started to shift. The waiting didn't stop. But the hope began to change shape. Because the longer the silence lasted, the harder it became to believe he was still trying. The first time they told me he left, I didn't believe it. I remember sitting at my aunt's kitchen table, staring at my mother while she spoke like she was explaining something simple. He's not coming, she said. He's moved on. I shook my head before she even finished. No, I said. That's not true. She didn't argue. That's what made it worse. She just looked at me with this quiet certainty, like she had already accepted something I hadn't even been given the chance to question. "He knows where you are," she said. "If he wanted to find you, he would have." That sentence stayed with me. It followed me into every quiet moment, because it sounded reasonable. And that's how the lie started to work. At first, I fought it. I kept writing letters. I kept waiting for something to come back. I told myself there had to be a delay, a mistake, something. But weeks turned into months, and nothing came. No letter, no call, no sign that he was even trying. My father called once just to check in. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just said, "I hope you understand now." I didn't respond, because part of me still didn't. But another part, the part that was getting tired of waiting, started to listen. "You were young," my mother said one afternoon. "Things feel bigger than they really are at that age." I stared at my hands, trying to hold on to what I knew was real. "It wasn't like that," I said quietly. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "It always feels different when you're in it." That was the moment something shifted. Not all at once, but enough. Enough for doubt to start creeping in. Because if he cared, if what we had meant what I thought it did, why hadn't he come? Why hadn't he fought for me? Why hadn't he found a way? Those questions didn't have answers. And slowly, my mind started filling in the silence for him. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe it wasn't as serious for him. Maybe I had been the only one holding on to something that wasn't real. That thought hurt the most. But it also made the most sense if I believed what they were telling me. So I started to let go. Not completely. Not cleanly. But enough to survive. I stopped writing. I stopped checking the mailbox every day. I stopped waiting by the window at night, listening for a car that never came. And in place of all that, I built a different story. One where he chose to leave. One where I wasn't enough to stay. It was the only way to make the silence make sense. Years later, I learned he was living with his own version of that same silence. That he had been told I left. That I didn't want to be found. That I chose a different life without him. He believed it, just like I believed mine. Two people, living separate lives. Both carrying the same pain. Both thinking the other one walked away. And neither of us knew. We were both wrong. I didn't fall in love again. I moved forward. There's a difference. A few years after I came back home, I met the man I would marry. He was steady, kind, the kind of person my family approved of without asking questions. That alone should have told me something. But by then, I was tired of fighting. Tired of holding on to something that had no place in my life anymore. He asked me out in a simple way. No pressure. No big promises. "I'd like to take you to dinner," he said. "If that's okay." I said yes because it was easy. Because saying no would have meant explaining something I wasn't ready to explain. Dinner turned into more dinners. Then weekends together. Then a life that slowly started to take shape. He never pushed too hard. Never asked too many questions about my past. I think he sensed there were parts of me that stayed closed. And, to his credit, he respected that. When he proposed, it wasn't dramatic. We were sitting in his living room. Quiet night. No special occasion. "I think we could build something good together," he said. "What do you think?" That was his way. Practical. Honest. Safe. I looked at him and tried to imagine a future that didn't carry the weight I had been holding. A life where things made sense. Where I didn't have to question everything. So I said yes. Not because I felt the same kind of love I once knew, but because I believed this was what moving on looked like. We got married in a small ceremony. Family. Friends. Smiles that felt real enough. And for a while things were good. We built a home. Had children. Filled our days with the kind of routine that keeps life steady. School drop-offs. Grocery lists. Weekend plans. The kind of life people point to and say, "You did it right." And in many ways, I did. I showed up. I cared. I gave what I could. But there was always a part of me that stayed quiet. A part one never shared. I never told my husband about him. Not once. Not even in passing. Because I didn't know how to explain a love that never really ended without hurting the life I had built. So I buried it deep. Years went by, and it got easier to keep that part hidden. But it never disappeared. Sometimes it showed up in small ways. A song on the radio that made my chest tighten. A certain kind of truck driving past that made me look twice. A name I would hear in passing that made everything inside me pause for a second. And then I would push it down again. Go back to what was in front of me. What was real. What I chose. My husband was a good man. He didn't deserve half of a heart. And I did my best to give him all of it. But the truth is, there are parts of you that don't follow rules. They don't disappear just because you decide they should. They wait. Quiet. Patient. And sometimes they come back when you least expect them. Late at night, when the house was still, I would find myself thinking about that summer. About the way everything felt before it was taken from me. About the questions I never got answers to. I stopped asking them out loud. But they never really left. I learned how to live with that silence. How to carry it without letting it break everything else. From the outside, my life looked full. And it was. But there was always something unfinished sitting underneath it all. Something I learned to ignore, but never truly let go. I stood there trying to understand what he had just said. You looked for me? The words felt strange in my mouth, like they didn't belong to the story I had been living with for so long. He nodded slowly. Even that small movement seemed to take effort. For years, he said, I didn't just let you go. Something inside me tightened. Because that one sentence, it didn't match anything I had been told. I pulled a chair closer and sat down, my eyes fixed on him. Then why didn't you find me? I asked. It came out sharper than I expected. Not anger exactly, but something close to it. He didn't react the way I thought he would. He didn't get defensive. He didn't pull away. He just looked at me, tired but steady. I tried, he said, over and over. I shook my head. I waited. I wrote to you. His brow furrowed. You wrote to me? Yes, I said. I told you where I was. What happened? Everything. He stared at me like I had just said something impossible. I never got anything, he said. The room went quiet again. But this time, it wasn't confusion. It was something heavier. I leaned back slightly, trying to piece together something that made sense. That doesn't make any sense, I said. I know, he replied. His hand moved slowly toward the small drawer beside his bed. It took him a moment to open it. Inside was a worn stack of envelopes, carefully kept, edges soft from time. He pulled them out and held them in his hands like they mattered. Read these, he said. I hesitated before taking them. The paper felt fragile, like it had been waiting a long time to be touched again. I looked down at the first envelope. My name was written across the front, not the name everyone else used, the one only he ever called me. My fingers tightened around it. I opened it carefully. The handwriting was his. There was no doubt. Rosie. I don't know where you are, but I'm not giving up. I stopped. My chest tightened so fast it caught me off guard. I flipped through the stack. More letters. Different dates. Different years. All written to me. All sent to the same place I had been. And I had never seen a single one. I wrote every time I found a new address, he said quietly. Every time I thought I got closer. I looked up at him, my heart pounding. I never got these, I said. I know, he replied. That answer landed heavier than anything else. Because it meant one thing. They were never meant to reach me. I went back to the letters. Some were short. Some were longer. All of them said the same thing in different ways. He was still looking. Still trying. Still holding on. One letter was dated nearly 10 years after we were separated. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I need you to know I didn't walk away. My vision blurred for a second. I blinked, trying to stay focused. All those years, all that silence, none of it had meant what I thought it did. I looked back at him. Why didn't you stop? I asked. He let out a slow breath. Because I knew you, he said. And I knew you wouldn't leave like that. That broke something in me. Because I had spent so many years believing the opposite. Believing I wasn't enough to stay for. Believing I had been forgotten. I thought you gave up on me. I said. His eyes didn't leave mine. Never, he said. There was no hesitation in his voice. No doubt. Just truth. I just ran out of ways to find you. I sat there, the letters still in my hands, trying to process what that meant. 2 lives. 2 stories. Built on something that was never true. I should have tried harder, he said quietly. I shook my head. So should I. We both stopped there. Because there was no way to measure something like that after so much time. No way to undo what had already been lived. He looked at me again, softer now. I never stopped loving you, he said. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. Just simple. Certain. And after everything I had just read, I believed him. I didn't understand it fully in that hospital room. Not yet. I was still holding those letters, still trying to catch up to a truth that felt too big to process all at once. But something in my mind, something I had pushed aside years ago, started to come back. A memory. Quiet. Distant. Easy to ignore at the time. But now it wouldn't stay buried. It was after my parents passed. The house felt different without them. Too quiet. Like it was holding things it never said out loud. I went back there alone a few weeks later. Not for anything specific. Just to go through their things. Decide what to keep. What to let go. I remember standing in the hallway, looking at doors that hadn't been opened in years. My father's office. My mother's closet. And the attic. I hadn't been up there since I was a teenager. Back when it was just a place for old boxes and things no one needed anymore. I almost didn't go up. But something pulled me. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the feeling that there were still pieces of my life in that house I didn't understand. The attic smelled like dust and time. Boxes stacked in corners. Old furniture covered with sheets. Things forgotten on purpose. I started opening boxes without thinking too much about it. Photo albums. Old clothes. Papers that didn't mean anything anymore. Then I found one box that didn't fit with the rest. It was smaller, tucked behind a larger trunk, like it wasn't meant to be seen right away. No label. No reason for it to be there. I pulled it out slowly and set it on the floor. For a moment, I just looked at it. I don't know why, but my hands hesitated before opening it. Like something inside me already knew this wasn't just another box. I lifted the lid, and everything inside me went still. Envelopes. Dozens of them. Stacked neatly. All the same size. Same shape. I picked one up. My name was on it. Written in his handwriting. My fingers started to shake. I opened it right there, sitting on the attic floor. The paper inside was yellowed, but the words were clear. Rosie. I stopped breathing for a second. I didn't need to read the rest to know. I already knew. I started going through the box faster. One letter after another. Different dates. Different years. All addressed to me. All unopened. None of them had ever been touched. My chest tightened so hard it hurt, because in that moment, everything I had believed for years started to break. He didn't leave. He didn't forget. He didn't stop trying. The letters were proof. Physical. Undeniable. He had been reaching for me the whole time. And someone had made sure I never saw it. I sat there on that attic floor for a long time. Letters spread around me. Pieces of a life I was never allowed to have. And the worst part wasn't just what was taken from me. It was who took it. Because those letters didn't get lost. They didn't disappear. They were kept. Hidden. Protected from me. Inside my own home. By the people who said they were protecting me. I tried to make sense of it. Tried to find a reason that would make it easier to accept. But nothing did. There was no version of this that felt like love. Only control. Only a decision made for me, without me. I remember holding one of the letters tighter than the others. Reading the same line over and over again. I'm not giving up on you. And realizing he never did. Someone else did that for him. Someone else decided when our story ended. And I had lived my entire life believing it was him. I didn't go to my sister right away. I needed time to sit with what I had found. Time to let it settle into something I could actually say out loud. But the longer I waited, the heavier it felt. Because this wasn't just about the past anymore. This was about a lie that had shaped my entire life. So I called her. She sounded surprised to hear from me. Not in a bad way. just cautious. Everything okay? She asked. No, I said. I need to talk to you. There was a pause on the line.
About what?
I didn't answer that. I'm coming over, I said. When I got there, she already knew something was wrong. You can tell after a lifetime of knowing someone. The way they look at you, the way they wait before speaking. She led me into the kitchen. Same table we had sat at years ago. Same quiet feeling in the room. What's going on? She asked. I didn't sit right away. I placed the box on the table instead. Her eyes dropped to it. What is that? You tell me, I said. She didn't touch it. That was the first sign. I found it in the attic, I said. After they passed. Her face shifted. Just slightly.
Enough.
I don't know what you're talking about, she said. I opened the box, pulled out one of the letters, and slid it across the table toward her. She looked at it, but she didn't pick it up. Read it, I said. I don't need to, she replied. That was the second sign. My chest tightened.
You knew, I said.
She shook her head quickly. No, I didn't. Don't. I cut in. Don't lie to me again. The room went still. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she sat down slowly, like whatever she had been holding up finally gave out. I was young, she said quietly. I stared at her. That's not an answer. She looked at the box again, then at me. He didn't want you with him, she said at first, like she was still trying to hold onto the old story. I felt something rise in my chest. That's not true, I said. I've seen the letters. Her eyes closed for a second, and when she opened them again, something had changed.
He made me do it, she said.
My breath caught.
Who? She didn't need to say it, but she did anyway.
Dad. The word landed heavy. I didn't speak. I needed her to keep going. He found the first letter before you ever saw it, she said. Then another. And another. My hands curled into fists. And instead of giving them to me, I said slowly. He kept them, she finished. The room felt smaller. Harder to breathe in. Why? I asked. Her voice dropped. Because he knew you wouldn't let go if you read them. I laughed once.
Short.
Empty. So, he decided that for me? She didn't answer. He told me to take them from the mailbox, she continued. Said it was for your own good. I shook my head, trying to process it. You helped him, I said. It wasn't a question. Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't look away. I thought it would pass, she said. I thought you'd forget him. I didn't, I said. I know that now. The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was heavy. Decades of something finally being said out loud. All those years, I said. I thought he walked away. She swallowed. And he thought you did the same. That hit harder than anything else, because it meant this wasn't just taken from me. It was taken from both of us. I looked at her again. Did you ever think about telling me? Her answer came too slowly. I wanted to, but you didn't. She shook her head.
No.
That was it. No excuse that could undo it. No apology that could change what had already been lived. Just the truth. Too late. Sitting between us. And nothing about it could be fixed anymore. I sat beside him, the letters still resting in my lap, and for the first time in my life, there was nothing left hiding between us. No assumptions. No guesses. No stories we were told to believe. Just the truth. And it felt heavier than anything I had ever carried. I spent years being angry at you, I said. My voice was steady, but it took effort. I know, he replied. I thought you walked away, I continued. I thought I wasn't enough for you to stay. He closed his eyes for a moment, like that hurt to hear. I thought the same thing about you, he said. I let out a slow breath. 2 lives built on the same misunderstanding. And neither of us had a chance to fix it when it mattered. I'm married, I said after a pause. He nodded slightly. I figured you did. He was a good man. I'm glad, he said. And I believed him. I had a family, I added. He looked at me again, softer this time. You deserve that. The words were simple, but they carried something deeper. No bitterness. No resentment. Just acceptance. What about you? I asked. He took a moment before answering. I tried, he said, but it never felt right. My chest tightened. I kept comparing everything to what we had, he admitted. That's not fair to anyone. I understood that more than I wanted to. I didn't forget you either, I said. His eyes met mine again. I know, he said quietly. We sat there for a while, without speaking. Not because there was nothing to say, but because there was too much. Too many years. Too many moments we never got to share. I used to think about that night, I said. The last time I saw you. He nodded. Me too. I kept waiting for you to come, I said. I did come, he replied. I froze. What? I went to your house the next day, he said. Your father told me you were gone. My heart dropped. What did he say? That you didn't want to see me, he said. That you made it clear. I shook my head slowly. That's not true. I know that now, he said. The silence that followed felt different. Not confusing.
Clear.
Painful, but clear. I should have pushed harder, he said. I should have found another way. I looked at him. So should I said. We both knew those words didn't change anything. They just gave shape to regret. After a moment, he shifted slightly, trying to get more comfortable. Even that looked difficult for him. I'm sorry, he said. For what? I asked. For not finding you sooner, he said. For not breaking through whatever was in the way. I shook my head. You tried, I said. I've seen it. That doesn't feel like enough, he replied. It has to be, I said. Because there was no version of this where we could go back and do it differently. No second chance at being 17 again. No way to undo the years that had already passed. There were so many things I wanted to say to you, he said. You can still say them, I replied. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled just a little. That's the problem, he said. There's too many now. I smiled back, even though my chest felt tight. Then start with one. He took a breath. I never stopped choosing you, he said. That stayed with me. Simple.
Honest.
Late, but real. I reached for his hand without thinking. It was weaker than I expected, but it was still his. And for the first time in 60 years, we weren't separated by silence anymore. We were just two people, finally telling the truth. I could tell something had changed the next morning. The room felt different. Quieter than before. Not peaceful, just heavy. He was still there, but not in the same way. His breathing had slowed. Each breath seemed harder than the last, like his body was working for something it could no longer keep up with. I was already sitting beside him when he opened his eyes. You stayed, he said, his voice barely there. I'm not going anywhere, I replied. And I meant it. Not this time. A nurse came in, checked his vitals, adjusted something on the machine, then gave me a look I didn't need explained. I understood. Time was running out. I pulled my chair closer to the bed. His hand was resting on top of the blanket. I reached for it again. Still warm. Still his. I wish we had more time, I said. He gave a small, tired smile. We always thought we did, he whispered. That truth settled between us. We had wasted years believing we had time. And now we didn't. I thought about you every year, he said after a moment. I swallowed. So did I. I used to wonder where you were, he continued. If you were okay. If you were happy. I took a breath before answering. I had a good life, I said. But there was always a part of me that didn't understand why you left. He closed his eyes briefly. I never left you, he said. I know that now. And saying that out loud felt different. It didn't fix anything. But it removed the weight of something I had carried for too long. I'm glad you came, he said. I almost didn't, I admitted. His eyes opened again. What changed your mind? I looked at him for a second. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what I never said. He nodded slowly. That makes two of us. There was a long pause. Not uncomfortable, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when everything important has already been said. I used to think if I ever saw you again, I'd have all these things to say, I told him. And now, he asked. Now I just want to sit here. He smiled a little. That's enough. His grip on my hand shifted slightly. Weaker now. I felt it. And I didn't let go. I need you to know something, he said. I leaned in closer, so I wouldn't miss it. I never loved anyone the way I loved you. The words were simple, but they carried everything. Every year, every letter, every moment we lost. Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't look away. I know, I said. And I never forgot you. His breathing slowed again. More space between each breath. The monitor beside him kept its steady rhythm, but his body was starting to fall behind it. I'm tired, he whispered. It's okay, I said softly. I don't want you to think. I gave up, he added.
You didn't, I said.
You never did. He looked at me one last time. Really looked, like he was trying to hold on to that moment. To me, it was always you, he said. I tightened my hand around his. And it was always you for me too. His eyes stayed on mine for a second longer. Then slowly, they closed. His hand relaxed in mine. The room stayed quiet. The monitor changed its sound. And just like that, he was gone. I didn't move right away. I just sat there, still holding his hand, even after it wasn't holding mine back. Because after 60 years, we had finally found each other again. And I had lost him all over again in a single moment. After the hospital, everything felt quieter than it should have. Not peaceful, just different. Like something that had been sitting inside me for years had finally settled, but I didn't know what to do with the space it left behind. I went home that night and didn't turn on the lights right away. I just stood there in the entryway, holding my keys, letting the silence sit with me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't asking myself questions. There was no why. No what if. No maybe. I finally knew, and somehow that truth hurt less than the years of not knowing. The next morning, I took the box of letters out again. Not just his letters. All of them. The ones I found in the attic. The ones he kept. The ones that never reached where they were meant to go. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and started reading them again.
Slow this time.
Not searching for answers. Just understanding. Each letter felt different now. Before, they were proof of something taken from me. Now, they were proof of something that never left. That mattered. More than I thought it would. I didn't rush through them. I let myself feel each word. Each year, he spent trying. Each moment, I spent believing something that wasn't true. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. Not at him. Not even the way I used to feel about my parents. Just clear. That surprised me. Because I thought the truth would bring more anger. More regret. But it didn't. It brought something else. Something quieter. Something closer to acceptance. A few days later, I called my children. I asked them to come over. All of them. They thought something was wrong. I could hear it in their voices. Are you okay? My daughter asked. Yes, I said. I just need to tell you something. They came that evening. We sat in the living room. Same place where I had spent years being the person they knew. The version of me that didn't include this part of my life. I looked at them and for a moment, I didn't know where to start. Because how do you explain something you've carried for 60 years? I haven't told you everything about my life, I said. They didn't interrupt. They just listened. So I told them. About that summer. About him. About what happened. About the letters. About the lie. I didn't rush it. I didn't soften it. I just told the truth. The room stayed quiet the whole time. No one tried to stop me. No one tried to explain it away. When I finished, my son leaned back slightly, like he was trying to take it all in. I had no idea, he said. I know, I replied. My daughter looked at me differently. Not distant. Just seeing something new. Why didn't you ever tell us? She asked. I took a breath. Because I didn't understand it myself, I said. Not until now. That was the truth. You can't share something you haven't made sense of. We sat there for a while after that. Talking. Asking questions. Filling in pieces that had been missing. And for the first time, I felt like they knew all of me. Not just the parts that were easy to explain, but the ones that stayed hidden. That mattered more than I expected. Later that night, after they left, I went outside and sat on the porch. The air was cool. Quiet street. Familiar. I thought about everything. The life I lived. The choices I made. The things I lost. The things I kept. And I realized something simple. I didn't get the life I thought I would have. But I did get a life. A full one. A real one. And now, I finally understood the part of it that never made sense. I looked up at the sky for a moment, then back down at my hands. Steady now. No more shaking. No more waiting. Just knowing. And somehow, that was enough. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you for listening with your heart. Some truths come too late, but they still matter. I wonder, have you ever believed something about someone you loved, only to find out years later it wasn't true? That kind of pain doesn't just disappear. It changes how you see everything. If this story touched something in you, I'd really like to hear your thoughts below. And if you want more real stories like this, you're always welcome here.